In this video I'm going to talk about how to drive forwards into a parking bay. So it's one of the manoeuvres on the UK driving test. I'm going to talk about how to line it up, how to position, and also if it goes wrong, how to know, and also how to correct any mistakes. Okay, so just on your driving test, for example, just because you have one go at the manoeuvre does not mean after all that is it. You do get your chances to adjust if necessary, so stay tuned. Okay, so as you turn down one of the aisles preparing to do the forward bay park, first thing you must do is get as far away from the bays as you possibly can to maximize your space. So I'm going to be going into one of the bays on the right hand side, just after that blue car you can see there. So if you notice, I'm trying to get my left tyres as close to the bays on the left hand side as I possibly can. If you don't do this, if you start off obviously a lot closer to that central line, you will then basically just not allow yourself enough space to be able to swing into that bay. You'll run out of space and get towards the end of the bay, which could be a curb or a line or another parked vehicle, very quickly. So you'll very quickly run out of space. So if you look at it, how do I know if I'm as far over to the left bays as I possibly can? What I must do, if I just lower my left hand mirror, there we go. So you see, I can see the start of the bays there. So you can see actually, if I just move it in, I could actually go a little bit closer, but depending on if there's any cars in the bays which overhang, so you sometimes can have some large vehicles sort of overhang the bay. This looks pretty close, so I've maxed out my space then. So if I then just transfer the shot over to the right hand side here, you can see I'm a long way away from those bays, so I've maxed out my space potentially to have a go at this manoeuvre. If I started off any closer, I'm just limiting my space. I may not be able to get into the bay straight, particularly if there's cars on either side, and particularly I'll run out of space before I'm trying to get obviously parts before that curb that's just there. Okay, so when you're trying to line it up regarding going into the bay, I'm just going to try that bay there that's just after this Range Rover, just on the side here. Essentially what I've got is I've got my shoulder in line with, if you look at the number plate on the Range Rover there, looking at maybe the J, and in between the J maybe the Land Rover sign. So I've got my shoulder somewhere here. Okay, so it's just before the middle of the bay is about here. So I generally get my shoulder about here, and that's only because I sit quite far back in the chair. I'm 6'1", so I do sit quite far back. So if you move the seat forward, your shoulder may look a little bit more central here. So it does sometimes depend on how tall you are and where you have, but I generally recommend go just before the centre. But if you're quite short, maybe get your shoulder somewhere near the centre, just around about here. But I'm going to go with my shoulder around about here as I'm going to go in. So another way to look at it, apart from maybe looking at where your shoulder is in relation to the car there, if I turn the shot diagonally there, you can see where the left line will end up. This will be the bay I'll be parking into. This will be the bay that will be on the line, sorry, which will be on the left hand side of me. It's kind of level with the middle of the mirror if you look at it. So if I just draw a little line there, you can see it's just level with the middle. So that's a probably good way to look at it. And the bay always that I'm going to go into should look diagonal from where you're sat. Okay, so I've got my shoulder where I need it there, just between the J and the Land Rover sign. So I'm in gear 1, just going to check to my left to right blind spot. Then as soon as I'm moving, I'm going to lock my steering wheel all the way to the right. Okay, so I'm starting going, keeping it nice and slow, just checked over my right blind spot again. Okay, so it's looking okay at the moment. Right, so about that moment there, okay, if I just transfer, I'll just stop there and just move the camera a touch. Okay, so you can see where the line is here. So I'm not too close to the car there, I can still see the line, so I know I'm okay. So at this point I'm going to start to take my steering lock off, keeping my distance from Range Rover there. Okay, so I'll look relatively straight and I'll look like I'm in the bay now, and I'll just roll it slowly forwards. Okay, till about there. Okay, so you can see I've got a nice distance between me and the Range Rover. Okay, so when you're talking about steering lock to the right, this is what we're after. So we're looking to get the gas and biting point ready first, handbrakes off. Now, as soon as I move, steering lock to the right. So you notice it went a full turn and then like an extra quarter as I'm going in. So as I'm going in, start to take my turn off as I get there, all the way off now. And then I'll just roll forward into the bay. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the driver's perspective as you're coming in. You can just about see the left line there. If I stop, that's the left line of the bay that's going to end up on the left of my car. And you can see the right line just coming up here. It's just next to the car that's going to be next to me. Alright, you can also see then, if I stop it there briefly, this lamppost here. So I'm going to try and line up the lamppost so it looks like it's down the middle of my car, which from the driver's perspective looks like it's down basically leveled with the left side of your body from your left shoulder. So I'll keep it rolling in there. Starts to look central now. I'll let my turn off there. So essentially I'm sat round about here. This is me, this is my perspective. My left shoulder looks just slightly left of me here. So I feel like I'm sat there. That's me looking at the bay in front. I'm looking at that bit, but my left shoulder looks in line with this lamppost, which if you look, looks pretty central from that bay that's in front of me as well. It's a good way to sort of try and line it up, is looking at something that's in the middle. Now if you've got a lamppost there, that's perfect, because that actually has you in the middle of the bay. Now an easy way to judge whether you are far enough forwards but not overhanging that curve that's just in front of it there is, as you're rolling forward, what you want is the curve just underneath your side mirror. So if I keep rolling there, keep rolling there, and if I stop about there. Okay, so if you can see there, if I just hold the camera just still there, let's just zoom in a touch. Right, so what you've got there is the curve's just at the bottom here, as you can see. Curve's just down there, but there's a bit of a gap between the bottom of the side mirror here and the curve. So the width of it's only, what's that, about an inch maybe more than that. Basically, just imagine the width of your favourite chocolate bar. So my favourite chocolate bar is a Boost. Obviously, that's all down to everyone's own subjective opinion. But yeah, if you think about that little gap there between the bottom of the curve and the mirror there, that generally gives you a good indicator. It's not always perfect for every car, this one. So if you've got a bigger car, it might be slightly different. But for my car, that generally works. So just try it and then just see how it works. A good thing to do is get out of the car then and have a look actually where that is. Okay, so this is how it looks from the outside. If I just bring it around so you can see. There we go. So I'm not overhanging that curve there. Nicely in the line, as you can see here. Well, that was using that little windscreen wiper, not the windscreen wiper, sorry, the wing mirror underneath this little curb here. So we had that little chocolate bar sort of gap between the two. So if you can use that as a marker, that's your gap between the car and the curb. You can obviously go a little bit further if you need to, but if you compare it to the back of the car, we're not stuck out too much at the back, so there was no mad necessity to go too far forward in comparison, if you can see there. So as you can see there, I've got the gap between the bottom of the curb and my side mirror. We talked about having a little chocolate bar gap between the two. So you've got the curb down here, the mirror here, then the gap is about there. So it's around about an inch, so like I said, the width of your favourite chocolate bar. If you go a little bit further, it could overhang that curb. So if I go forwards like that, alright, I'm just going to intentionally bump that curb there. So just bump the curb now. And you can see the difference now. The curb's completely disappeared. You can see it to the side. Now I've stopped. If I just try and move the camera up a touch, you can see where that curb is now. If I just turn it just briefly sideways, you see it just looks too far. So that if you've got basically a big gap between the bottom of the side mirror and that curb, you know you're probably overhanging that curb at the front. Whereas if I just back up again, there's my small gap. That's my small gap that I need. Okay, so you can see the gap's not this big as it was before. It's just a small gap then. So just between the bottom of the mirror and the curb. So this is how it should look. Okay, now this is how it looked when the
gap between the curb and the side mirror was pretty big, well, more than the chocolate bar that I was just mentioning previously. The problem is now I'm overhanging that curb, so you can see my tyres are not resting against it. If I just crouch down there, you've got the whole front bit of my car, my front bumper and everything there is overhanging. The problem is, in some situations, this curb here, okay, in a lot of instances in some cars, that will actually be a white line that divides, and then there'll be bays on this side here instead of this grass that's here. So the bushes in this sort of gravelly bit. Okay, so if you are overhanging a line, you're potentially in another car's bay. So what about if the other car comes in on the bay that's on this side of you here potentially, and then does exactly the same? There's essentially going to be a collision. They're either going to crash into the front of you with their front of their car, or they're going to actually reverse, potentially not maybe assume that you're going to be overhanging that, and then they might end up backing into you inadvertently. Okay, so if you always aim to be before the curb or before the line, then that will help to guarantee that there'll be no collisions with anyone else parking in front of you.
Now when you're reversing out of the bay, I'm going to steer lock to the left to try and come out, but I've got this car that's next to me on the right. I need to make sure I don't turn too early, because if I do, my front of my car is just going to basically just scrape all the way down the side of that car that's next to me. It's quite a nice car as well, so I don't really want to be doing that. So I'm going to back up until my side mirror is near the end of the vehicle. I'm not going to contemplate any turn until that moment. So I've checked my left and right blind spot before I pulled out. Looks clear. Start to reverse. So keep backing up, so I'm nowhere near the back yet, not considering any turn yet. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and I'll stop about there. Right, so now my side mirror looks level with the end, so I can consider some turn now, but I'm not going to do a steering lock at this point. All I'm going to do is going to turn the steering wheel half to the left, just turning the wheel upside down. So a half steering turn to the left looks like this. So you can see how the steering wheel looks upside down. So the Ford here, that was obviously written standard way up there, if I turn it that way. Now if I turn it upside down, that's a half turn to the left. Okay, so now I'm going to put that half steering wheel turn on. Just there. So I've just put my half on, so I'm starting to turn, starting to turn, starting to turn. Now I'm going to stop there, because now the front of my car is now clear of the back of their car. Just twist the shot round now I've stopped. Yeah, so it feels like my front's out and my front is clear of that now. So at that point I can put the rest of my steering lock on to make it a full steering lock to the left. Yep, that looks fully clear, so I've got my steering lock on to the left now. Right, now what I'm looking for now is I don't want to go too far back into the bays that are behind me. So I'm seeing that central line, it's just on my right shoulder now, if you can see there. I'm going to keep going back until my shoulder looks in the middle of that aisle that you can see there, about there. So I'm going to steering lock off now and stop quickly. So there we go, so my shoulder's in line with this middle aisle here. So I know now I've not gone back too far into the bays behind me here. I've left a little bit of space because I'm only in the middle here, but I know on this side I've got plenty of space on this aisle here to be able to steering lock to the right and not get anywhere near that car that I've just reversed out next to. So pop it into gear 1, quick check of your left and right blind spot. As you move off, quick steering lock to the right, and there we have it.
Okay, so the bay I'm going to aim for here is the bay that's just diagonal in front of me there. What I've got myself lined up here, if you look at it, I'm going to use this bollard here as my marker. That's the middle of that bay. So like I mentioned previously, I want my right shoulder just before the middle, which is about here. That's where I am now. Alright, so as I go into this bay that's just diagonal in front of me here, I'm going to try and line up with this bollard in the middle bit of my windscreen, if I turn the camera around, which will be somewhere around this point here. Okay, so as I go into the bay, just keep in mind and just reference this point here. That's where the bollard will end up. That's how I know if I'm central. Okay, so left to right blind spot check. Nothing around, so no need to indicate. Okay, so my handbrake's off. Soon as I'm moving, steering lock to the right. One more check of my right blind spot. Right, so I'm starting to go into the bay. You'll see the bay starting to appear shortly. Right, so there's that bollard I was talking about. Remember that point I was trying to line it up with? So if I steering lock off now, that looks relatively straight. So you can see where the bollard is. It's just here. Like I said, it's just round about where the mark was here, which I was pointing out just before I started. And I'm just going to roll slowly forward until I'm in. Stop about there. Right, so that bollard, if you look at it, they're central, okay? Where I'm actually sat looks more here. So this is where I am. So I know the centre of the bay needs to be just left of where I'm sat. So obviously in the car, well in the UK, you sit on the right hand side of the car. After all, you don't sit in the middle. So the bollard should look just left of you. If you imagine where you're sat here, that bollard looks like it's essentially lined up down the left side of your body. So from your left foot, your left knee, your left hip, and your left shoulder. So if you look at that bollard there, if that looks like it's lined up down the left from where you're sat, you know you should be relatively central in the bay. Okay, now how do you know if you're angled? Now if you remember before, what I want is that bollard that's just in front of me here. Where I was straight, that bollard was here. Okay, so now the bollard's to the right, that means my front of my car must be pointing more to the left, because the bollard's now more right than it was previously. Another way of knowing is if you look at this mirror, it looks like I'm angled towards that bay that's on my right hand side rather than lined up. I should really be able to see the line of the bay that's behind me in this right mirror, but because I'm front angled to the left, so my back's angled to the right, it actually looks like my back of the car is facing that bay on the right hand side. If I twist it over to the left mirror, yeah, you see, you can actually see the bay behind now, and the line, if I just move in there, if you look at it, it looks like I'm pointing back end to the right, doesn't it? It doesn't look like I'm pointing towards the bay at all. So this is how I know if I'm angled, from using my side mirrors. Okay, now to correct this angle, I need to reverse, because my back end's facing to the right, my front's facing to the left, but because I'm reversing and my back's facing to the right, I must steer to the left to make sure I can get rid of that angle. Okay, so what I want is I need to get this bollard more here as I reverse. Okay, right, quick check of my left and right blind spot. Looks clear. So because remember my back angle's to the right, I'm going to turn the wheel to the left. Okay, so as I'm turning to the left, look at that bollard coming back to where it needs to be. Nearly there, and there. Right, now I can straighten up. So if you look, the bollard is now back here from where it was here previously. So I've now got rid of that angle. Now I can just pop it back into gear 1, and then I can just roll slowly forwards again. Like so. So there's no need to reverse completely out of the bay if you think you've got rid of the angle. It was only a small angle I had, and there was no need for me to reverse fully out of the bay. But that is also an option. Okay, so I'll show you that now. I'll check my left-right blind spot again. Yep, looks clear. So if I back up fully, because I can see the lines of the bay in front of me, but they're not the lines of the bay that I'm in. So I'll keep just checking over my left and right blind spot as I'm backing up. Right, so you can see I can see the lines of my bay now. So if I stop about there, I can see the lines. Now obviously you can see the line here obviously is lined up with the bay that's in front, and it's the same on this side. Okay, the line here is lined up with that line that's just ahead there. But now I backed up, I can see that bollard is again, this marker here, looks like it's in the middle. So if I roll back forwards again, as I'm going in, that bollard's just staying central. There we go, keep going, and then I can stop there. Okay, so this is at another angle, okay? So if you look at it now, this bollard that I had here previously is now here. So what that means now is the front of my car is facing more to the right, it's not straight, and that means the rear of my car is facing to the left. So if I'm going to correct that, what I must do, because the rear of my car is facing to the left, I must reverse and steer to the right. Okay, so again, quick check of my left and right blind spot. Looks clear. So I'm going to steer to the right, and as I steer to the right, watch where this bollard moves to. There we go. So look how the bollard's just moving a little bit more to the right again. Just keep going till it looks like where the bollard's where I want it, which is about there. And stop. Right, so the bollard's gone from here back to where I wanted it, which was here. Now pop it in gear 1, and again, just roll forwards. Like so. Okay, so from in the car, this is what it looks like in the mirrors when your front angle is facing to the right, but the rear is facing to the left. So if you look, I'm looking at the left mirror there, and you can see, if I just zoom in slightly, the left of my car is angled towards that line of the bay behind me, which is on the left hand side. So I can't be straight. If I transfer it over to the right mirror, yeah, you can see there, I'm actually not straight and parallel with that line that's behind me on the right. I'm actually facing more to the left. Okay, so if you look at this now, I'm actually too far to the right. I'm too close to the right hand line. Now the way I know is, look where the bollard is. The bollard, I wanted it here previously. Look how far to the left it is now. So if the bollard's suddenly gone to the left, that means my car has obviously gone a lot more to the right. So I'm actually on the line that's on the right side. Obviously this is the bay in front, but this line lines up with the bay that's on me. So I'm actually onto that line on the right hand side. So to adjust that, there's one or two things I could do. I could either reverse back straight, which is what I'm going to do, or because if there was a car next to me on the right, if I put some turn on, all the front of my car is going to do is scrape into the car that's just to the right of me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to back up in a straight line, then I'm going to do my turn and my adjustment as I go forwards in. Okay. Right, so I'm in reverse, looking over my left to right blind spot again. Looks clear. So I'm just going to back up in a straight line. Check over my left and blind spot sporadically over there, just making sure there's nothing coming. Right, so I'm going to keep backing up until I can see the lines of my bay. There we go. Right, so I can see the lines of my bay, yeah, and it looks like I'm a lot to the right. So I'm going to have to go forwards and steer to the left. So keep an eye on where this bollard is at the moment. Okay, so forwards, steer to the left. Okay, see how I'm getting it more central. Right, that bollard looks a little bit more where I need it now. Now I'm going to steer to the right to try and get rid of that angle I've created. Alright, now the bollard looks where I need it now. So I'm just going to straighten my wheel and then again roll slowly forwards. Alright, good. Yeah, so I've got the bollard now more where I wanted it here. Alright, whereas previously it was right the way over here, which meant I was too far to the right. Okay, now for this example, I'm too close to the line on the left. Now you can clearly see where the bollard is here. The bollard's just too far to the right. Remember, I needed the bollard somewhere here, and it's way too far to the right. So again, I'm going to back up in a straight line, just so we can see the lines of the bay that we're in. Quick check of left to right blind spot again, looks clear. Okay, so backing up in a straight line. Again, just check over your blind spot sporadically as you're passing out. Okay, right, so I can start to see the lines of my bay now. So I'm just going to stop it there. Right, so now I'm going to go forwards in. Now obviously I'm on the line that's on the left, so I'm obviously going to have to steer to the right initially as I go in. Okay, so steering to the right, and watch where the bollard starts to become a little bit more central again on the front windscreen. Alright, that now looks like I've got it where I want it. Now I'm going to steer to the left just to try and straighten the car out. Alright, and it's about where I need it now. Straighten up, and again, just roll slowly forwards. Okay, right, yep, so I've got the bollard now nicely back into the middle, whereas previously the bollard was right the way over here, so I knew I was too close to the left.